everyone, this is Tom from Cerulean Bay, and we have another great episode for you today. We are so fortunate to have Amy Barrickman join us. She is an interior designer, she's an author, and she's just got some amazing tips about how you can create your own spaces at home. So let's welcome Amy to the show. Here we are with a wonderful guest who has taken time out of her busy day to spend time with us. This is Amy Barrickman. She's an interior designer, and she has got the expertise that I don't have, which is why I'm so grateful that she's here. So, Amy, if you would just give us an intro, and I'll let you take it away.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I'm honored. And give yourself some credit. I think you've got a design eye, and you don't need a degree to do it. But I am
Thank
Amy
you.
Barrickman. I am an author and interior designer, and I guess I don't like the word influencer, but I am on at Barrickman Design, YouTube, TikTok is where I have a pretty decent following. Also on Instagram, I love to post informational videos about interior design and how you can create that in your own home with or without a design professional.
Very cool. So, one of the things I've got my little list of questions here is just what I know you'll be able to help us out with is what people should look for when they're choosing a designer. And the reason that's important to me is because when I was doing some design work and when I was a realtor, I'm a former realtor as well from San Diego, and you're dealing with people there who are going to come in and do a full remodel and they have no clue what to do. And that's not to point fingers or fault them. Some people just don't have that eye. They don't have an eye for space or color or design. So what do you recommend that people should look for if they want to hire a designer?
Well, of course, with any contractor, it is the most valuable if you can get a recommendation from a friend who you have seen their work. That is going to be your winning formula, but we can't always get that. So let's talk about our next step. Our next step would be finding someone, this is going to sound obvious, but you want to like their work. Now, in my opinion, a good designer can give you a look that they've never done that style before, because design is really about you. It's about what works for your home and what makes you happy. So you want a designer that can do that. But if you've looked at their portfolio, if you've gone on their website or their Instagram page or whatever it is, and you really jibe with those pictures, that is going to be a good start. But that's not where you want to stop. You also want a personality meet. So meeting with the person, even if it's just a phone call, you're going to know pretty quickly if you have that kind of synchronicity. And that is so important because it's a really, it's a tight relationship. And we all use designers differently. Some people will just use them for an hour or two in their home. Some people, this will become a long-term relationship. So it matters more if you're looking for someone who's going to be in your home all the time, installing things, bringing things to you. But either way, you want to have a personality match. And if you don't, that's okay. They probably have lots of inquiries and you have lots of people to call. So, thank them and move on. Don't waste time with someone where you're not getting that right away.
I kind of had that similar thing when I was a realtor. And in San Diego, everybody's house is the most beautiful and the sellers want $5 billion for their house and the buyers want to pay $100,000. And I had to interview my clients because while I needed every listing I could get, there were some people I'm like, oh, this is going to be a nightmare. And I had to walk away because that, like you said, the personality's not there. I had my way of working that I needed to bring in to get the job done. And if they were always pushing back on everything, it's like, nope, next.
Right. It's not worth it for either party, really, because no one benefits in that situation. So find someone where you're excited to see them, where you're liking what they're doing. And if at any time you don't feel that way, you'll save everyone money by moving on.
So very, very true. That's a really good point. So, and you had actually said in the video that I had mentioned when you were on the podcast Hammer and Grind, and I have it here, where you had said something to the effect of doing design and improvement projects at home is a privilege and a luxury, but that doesn't mean it won't include stress and frustration. I love that because
I life in a nutshell.
I can only imagine that when people are going to spend their hard-earned money on a designer, and I'm sure good interior designers are not cheap, they're also expecting you to have all the answers every 5 minutes. So how do you kind of handle that when things start to go sideways with a
Ooh.
client or
Well, look, I've been really lucky. My clients are the best people in the world. In the world. I
Mhm.
mean, really, I've been so lucky with clients. And the hurdle for me has been bumps along the way in other areas. Things coming in, not exactly what we expected, or contract or things like that. But my so how do we deal with this? So I'm always telling, and this is in my book. Here's a shameless plug: The Living Room Design Formula. It's on Amazon.
Awesome.
This is in my book, which is you have to trust the process. So my number one thing is when something is bumpy along the way, whether that's a client who had a bad day or a contractor who didn't do something the way it was expected, when something happens, you have to trust the process. And we can't be jumping to conclusions. There's a part in my book where I talk about how I can almost time when I'm going to get a call from a client, because when you are working on a room, you're dropping a lot of money, stuff starts trickling in, and you start second guessing it. And this will happen in your own home. If you order that sofa, it comes and you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting this. And then you start to freak out and think the whole thing's a
Yeah.
mess, right?
Mhm.
So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are sometimes workarounds, or sometimes we just need to wait for that full picture to come together. And it can
Mhm.
be frustrating, it can be slow, but I just assure my clients, trust the process. I promise you it's going to come together. And one thing I can say with certainty is when
Mhm.
I go through all the steps I do for design that are listed in the book, when I go through all of those steps, it always turns out beautifully. There are times
Awesome.
along the way where you might not be sure. But in the end, it, clients have always been happy. I've never had a client who was unsatisfied when we've fully put together a space. And you can
That
do
is
that
awesome.
too by using checks and balances and the
Mhm.
formula that I put together in the book.
Well, that's awesome, and I'm so glad to hear about the book because, like I said, for people that aren't located close to you and they can't hire you personally, that will steer them in the right direction. And what I always love about things and processes is making sure that they're crystal clear, giving people a step-by-step option or ways, process to do things to come to a beautiful completion. And I think a lot of times it ends up coming out better than they even thought it would. But I should
But
say that, yes, prayer always helps.
I'm glad you said that because, yes, prayer does always help. No, I'm glad you said that because I think it's an important point for people listening to understand, which is when you take on any sort of design project, something simple like hanging a gallery wall or a big renovation, your finished product is probably not going to be the thing you envision on day one, but it
Mhm.
will be better. So being able to keep that little bit of mental plasticity so that you
Mhm.
can go, okay, I thought I was going to put the sink there. But as I analyze it, I actually really like it here. Giving yourself a little bit of flexibility, not too much, because then we get overwhelmed, but a little bit
Yeah.
of flexibility, you will get the best result.
That's a really, really good point, is people should have some flexibility built in, because I remember at Ethan Allen, there were some customers who wanted a specific look, and that was it, nothing else. I'm like, and then you do encounter things in their home where something is just not physically possible, or, whatever looked good in the store color-wise is just not gonna look the same in your house, because I always tell people that. It drives me nuts. Still at places like Home Depot today with the paint chips. Don't look at the paint chip in the store, because who has lighting like this at home?
Oh my gosh.
My mom taught me that because she loved to paint too.
Yeah.
Getting into some of the design tips here, you and correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like you do focus heavily on living rooms and family rooms, so maybe like the common areas of the house. When it comes to those kinds of designs, and maybe somebody has something in mind, but then they've got a big family, they've got a bunch of kids, they've got 5 dogs, and you're right away, trying to put this together. What tips do you have, or what suggestions do you have about how to go about that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I am a big advocate of one room at a time design. You focus on one room at a time. And that's why this book is focused on the living room, because I
Mhm.
wanted people to really be able to hone in on one space. And that gives you so much confidence. When you can do one space, you're going
Mhm.
to gain confidence in yourself, in your abilities, but also you gain confidence with the people around you. So whether it's a spouse or family members or whatever, when they see one room to completion, it
Mm-hmm.
opens up things for future things in other rooms. It also
Mm-hmm.
helps with keeping your home current. So by focusing on one room at a time, we're going to focus on this room, then we move on, and we get to
Mm-hmm.
a point where maybe that first room we want to refresh. Well, the other things in our house weren't done at the same time as that first room, so we don't need a refresh everywhere. It
Yeah.
kind of spreads out our energy. So that I'm a
That's a
big
good tip.
proponent of that. And then my tips for approaching it with,
Mm-hmm.
family, it's really considering who is using the space. And there's a whole list of questions in the living room design formula. There's a whole there's a whole list of questions about figuring out who is using the space, what time of day are they using the space, how are they
Mm-hmm.
using the space, who is using it on rare occasions, who is using it every day, so that you can design your room to fit your needs in the
Yeah.
best way possible. And that even asks questions about, like, do you have friends who spill wine? Because then we're going to choose a different rug, right?
Yeah.
So going through the process, taking the time, I think it's so tempting to just jump into, oh, I like this sofa, I'm going to order it. And then
Exactly.
next thing you know, you're kind of putting something together hodgepodge. What we want to do is start at the very beginning, go through the process, understand what we want for the space. And then that way, everything that comes in is getting filtered through that. So you're getting a
Mm-hmm.
good result when it all comes out. You're really safeguarding yourself in a way to make sure that your final product is what you are looking for.
Well, it's true. And I don't think people consider the usage of the room. And I mean, I remember I had an aunt when I was little and I'd go visit, and she had the plastic on the couch and the plastic runners, and her little living room was like a museum. And it's like, wait, at 7 years old, it didn't make sense to me. So,
Right. It still doesn't make sense to me. I grew up in a home where we had a living room and a dining room that we never went in. I mean, never. And even then, I thought, this is ridiculous. And now, when I'm designing a whole home, if we're laying out a whole home, I do not include a formal living room. We might do a study, a library, a bar,
yeah.
if we want that second living space. But what's the point of a formal living room? I want my family room to be pretty enough
Yeah.
that I want to be there and I can have people there.
Yeah. I love that, because when we were looking for a house here in Houston, they all had these formal living rooms. And in San Diego, where I'm from, we didn't have that. So that's nice to hear, because, well, we turned ours into an office for my wife. So
Great. I love it. It needs to have a purpose. If space
it
doesn't have a
does.
purpose, it's worthless to me.
Exactly. So on that note, speaking of the tropics,
Yeah.
do you ever get requests from clients to do tropical
Oh,
design,
yeah.
or, oh, you do? I'm curious just to hear what influences, maybe particular design styles or certain influences that you recommend to people.
Well, there are many different ways that comes into my work. First of all, I live outside of Philadelphia, and we are closely tied to these beach towns of Avalon and Stone Harbor. There are a lot of people from my area go to these beach towns, so we get coastal there.
Hmm.
We're definitely including coastal there, and that's where I'm more likely to include the really overtly tropical things. But my experience is, it's all about creating a space that makes you happy and makes you
Exactly.
feel content.
Hmm.
So people really relate to tropical themes. When they see a palm tree, whether it's a fabric or a wallpaper or piece of art, it gives them peace. So that's really valuable to me as a designer. If I can put something in a home
Hmm.
that looks right, and we can come back to that. But if I can put something in a home that gives people peace, they're going to be really happy with the long-term effects. So I love infusing tropical elements into my design in the right way.
In the right way, exactly that.
Yes.
Because when we first came up with the idea for this whole business called Cerulean Bay, it's I've done a ton of research on this, and people think, well, what is tropical? It's not just Hawaiian shirts and you're walking around with some fruity drink with an umbrella in it. And then where is tropical? It's not on Cape Cod or in the Hamptons or anything like that. Obviously, you get into what I call New England coastal, because it just has its own look. And I think of Ina Garten and Martha Stewart and people like that.
Hmm.
But then you get into South Florida, they have their own coastal look, which then south of West Palm Beach becomes tropical because you get the coconut palms and all that. And
Right.
then Southern California, where I'm from, so there's different versions of it all. So I think when people say, oh, well, I want coastal or I want tropical, I get them to think. And in the blog posts I've done and just a lot of the content I've written, I really want people to think about that because at the end of the day, they're spending their money. It's a pain in the rear to have to return stuff,
Hmm.
you so, and when you've already gone through the trouble of painting or putting in wallpaper, or you're buying furnishings and things like that, and then you're like, this is just way too bold, or it looks like a circus tent, or I don't know what, but it's guiding people from day one. So it's so nice to hear you say that you put some thought, get people to think. I always tell people, breathe, relax, and imagine.
Ooh, I
Slowly.
love that. I love that. Breathe, relax, and imagine. And really, it's
Exactly.
so important and it's so easy to overlook when you're
Yep.
putting things in your home because we just think, oh, I need chair. So I get chair. But really, really think about it because you're going to look at that for a long time. And
Exactly.
it leads me to talking about how to insert the tropical influence in a way that works. Now, it varies, of course, depending on where you're located. If you are in South Florida, I say go hog wild. I mean, go all
Yeah,
in on the palms. I love it. And
me
I have
too.
no problem, obviously.
I do. So, yeah, well,
I love it. I
so
love it. And I have no problem putting palms in any home. But there's a way to do it. So, in my opinion, if you don't live in a tropical area, you can still nod to those things
oh,
in lots of
definitely.
fun ways
Yeah,
without it feeling totally out of place. So,
exactly.
one way I would do that would be integrating it in neutrals. So, let's say that just a palm tree really speaks to you. Instead of going for the bright green or the bright colors,
Mhm.
bring it in some neutrals so that it has a friend. It feels like it just fits right in your space. That could be in a pillow, that could be in art. Um, or I love that you did a show about putting it in a bathroom.
Mhm.
And I love that because for me, especially a powder room, but any bathroom, it's an escape. It's its own entity, so I can do kind of whatever I want. Now, of course, I want it to flow with the rest of the home, but
Yeah.
I like to go crazy in a powder room because you're only in there for a few minutes.
Yeah.
So
And
why
to me,
not?
go big and bold. To me, it's the only house
Right.
or the only room in the house where you can do that because, like you said, you're only in there briefly. Have that pop, have that wow,
Yes.
and, yeah, very cool.
So I think it's a great place to add a tropical influence. And then the other thing that is, I don't know how often you talk about it, but bamboo,
Oh,
um,
love it.
rattan, bringing in those natural textures. I have yet to find a room they don't work in.
Oh,
So
yeah,
if
all
you
my
know of
research
one, tell me. But I have yet
exactly.
to find a room they don't work in, and I love them everywhere I put them. And
Mhm.
that does not it doesn't matter where you live. You can totally bring in bamboo, rattan, jute, all the natural textures that give us that hint of tropical without
Yeah.
feeling overly.
And the whole thing is, if you live maybe in a place like Pennsylvania or Minnesota, a colder climate, definitely 4 seasons, a place that has to deal with a lot of overcast issues and it's not a sunny beach, there's so much that you can do in that room to remind you of it visually,
Exactly.
texturally. You can even bring in the smells with different diffused
Oh,
essential oils, and
oh, I
then you
love
can
that.
a
That
sound machine. Nowadays, sound machines they've come so far along. They're not that canned loop where you can tell where it ends and then it picks up again. It's so annoying.
yeah.
But you can get just a great sound system in there, a real comfortable chair. I mean, I tell people the only thing you really can't do is bring in a beach with the crashing waves, unless you happen to live in Miami Beach or something like that and it's right outside your
Right.
window. Or I can't put the swaying palm trees in your backyard when those coconut palms don't even grow here in Houston because the winter will kill them.
Yeah.
But you can have everything else. I think you can have
Absolutely.
everything else. So,
Absolutely. And to your point, it should be the amount that makes you happy. So
yeah,
good design is all about what makes you happy.
Yep.
that doesn't mean we ignore all the rules. It doesn't mean we just pretend, that we live wherever. But what it does mean is use that as your compass. If
Mhm.
you're shopping and you see something and it puts a smile on your face, I want you to go in that direction. And we can work other things around it to pull it so that it feels more neutral in your space, even if it's a little more overtly tropical.
Exactly, and I write about that where, if some people wanna do just a small corner in a room, they wanna maybe do the
Right.
whole room, then there's people like me that wanna do the whole house, and they even get into the entertaining and the lifestyle, and we're starting to branch out in that about, entertaining and the cocktail
Love
recipes and
it.
the food, and I'm
Oh,
like,
so
"When am I gonna
fun.
have time for all of that?" But I'll have to figure it out.
Well, people have to keep tuning in because
They
that is a
do.
really fun way to integrate your home and your lifestyle. I
Mhm.
think that's really important because, as we talked about in the beginning of this, it's all about what works for you
Yeah.
and building that way. So I love the fact that it's, I don't know, on brand maybe is the the word I'm going for.
So
But really, bring it in and also know who you are. So you live in Houston, which is a
yeah.
great city. You live in Houston. I think of Houston as being a colorful city. I think of it as being warm and colorful. And I can
Mhm.
just tell from meeting with you that you and your family are colorful. So if I were working with you, I would go all in on that color.
Oh,
Whereas
yeah.
some people are more neutral. They
Mhm.
can they should know they're neutral, but that doesn't mean you can't have a pop. It means for the big pieces, stick to the neutrals, but then
Yep.
bring in, remember that trip you took or the trip you want to take? Bring that little piece, put it as a pillow on your sofa,
Yep.
do a little accessory, bring it in, and let it bring a smile to your face and make you feel good
Yeah.
overall.
Exactly, and one of the things we do is almost an added layer on this is instead of having people just go out and randomly buy stuff because, well, there's a lot of reasons why I'm opposed to stuff that's made in China. I've been there, I've seen how it's made.
Right.
It's just a nightmare over they're just a giant copy machine. They steal other people's ideas and make everything.
This is true.
I'm all about supporting small artists, local businesses, and then when it comes to places like Fiji, where we've been to twice, and there's wood carvers and people that I know down there, it's authenticity. You just
Yes.
went to Bermuda or you went to Tahiti or Turks and Caicos or something like this. And if you're the type of visitor like I am, where we don't just hang out and do the touristy thing, I want to know, what is the Turks and Caicos about?
Right.
What is it? What is this country? What are the people like? That's what my wife and I like to do. And not that you have
Love
to go
that.
full on historian with it, but bring that authenticity home because a lot of times, and I noticed this in Fiji, all those hotels down there, they're all decorated with artwork from local artists.
Yeah.
And what I recommend people do is pay attention to when you go, even if you're just going to Miami or, just a cool hotel somewhere, look at what's around you. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? If you see
Mhm.
some cool art, find out who the artist was. We've
Yes.
actually stayed at a hotel where the art was for sale. Who knew? I mean, it just
And
try and on
usually much more affordable than other things you might be looking
yeah.
at.
And a lot of these local artists, they don't have web pages, but they have Facebook pages. You can find some really cool art in most countries
Yeah.
on this planet. So it's the whole authenticity of it because it's going to mean that much more because you now have pieces in your home which are from there. They're the
Yes.
same stuff you saw there. And yeah, I love that. I'm all
I
about
love that. And something I would
authenticity. And
encourage listeners to do is consider your collection as a true collection.
hmm
So, what I mean by that is if there's a way that you can use things that you have purchased on during your travels in a grouping, that
hmm
amplifies everything. So I'll give you an example. I think I was in college, my now husband and I went to Jamaica and we bought this like wooden fish that someone had carved. And it was really
hmm
cool. And that's something you can find in a lot of these tropical locations. So I now always look for a wooden fish because I love the idea of having a school of fish. I don't know where I came up with that. That it just came out. I love the idea of having a collection that I can point to, and it's from all of our journeys, but they all go together. So rather than having a fish and a head and a turtle and this, I encourage listeners to focus on one area. And it might take a few tries. You might have multiple collections. But the
But
point
it does.
being, if you can come up with that and you install, I'm picturing a floating shelf with all of your fish or whatever you choose, that gives it so much more meaning. And it's a really smart design tactic because it's pleasing to the eye, whether if someone comes into your house and they don't know those are from all your trips, it's still going to be really pleasing to the eye. It doesn't look like a hodgepodge of stuff. But then when you explain to them, it deepens the meaning.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's right
Yeah.
on. And same thing with photos, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm all about personalizing spaces. And when they see
Yeah,
things like those fish, they're not things that you can just run out to any home goods store and get.
exactly.
These are unique pieces. And photos, too, are all about personalizing spaces. So we actually, I did one podcast episode about sentimental value because a
Yeah.
lot of people overlook that. And bring in some of that into your personal space. Make it yours. Make it for you and
Absolutely.
whoever else is going to use that space.
I totally
So,
agree. And one of the things that your listeners can take advantage of is I have a website called gallerywalltips.com. That's
mhm.
gallerywalltips.com. They can go online and they can download a free PDF. And it gives you all the instructions for creating a gallery wall with photos. And that includes
Oh,
frame recommendations. It includes sizing recommendations using the size of your wall and figuring out what's best for your room. But most people
awesome.
have a naked wall somewhere that
Mhm.
kind of could use some help. And this is a really artistic way to do it. And I absolutely love the idea of pulling photos from previous vacations. I've done this with clients before. I like to print them all in black and white. And you put them all in a frame, usually in a grid pattern, but it depends on the space. And that will give you this really artistic version of family photos from vacations. It
That
looks
is a
so
cool
much more
idea.
high end. So
That is
gallerywalltips.com is where people can go
I've
for that.
and that is going into the show notes along with your
Great.
website and any other links you need me to put in there, I will put in the show
Thanks.
notes. So, oh my god, that's an awesome tip though because well, we had one wall in here that for years we didn't know what to do with and then I figured out what to do with it and my son ended up turning the area into a bar, which we didn't really need, but it's a cool bar. So, it's
Sounds
still
fun.
out there.
Yeah.
So, but to kind of move on from that topic there, then when it comes to getting things, where do you recommend people buy? Because I know when you get into furnishings, it's super expensive. And when I was at Ethan Allen, obviously we just sold Ethan Allen. But as a designer, you have everything basically available to you. Is it purely based on budget or if I was going to hire you to come in and do the house, it's like I would say, okay, where should we get the furniture from? How do
Right.
you
It's
answer
a
that?
really good question. And it's hard in the sense that I affirm that no one really knows how much money a room is going to cost, and that includes me. Um, because what I find is whenever in the past, when I would come up with a budget, I would be like, okay, I met these people. I have kind of an idea of the level of quality they're looking for and all these things. And I could put together a budget. But then when you actually start going through, you're like, oh, but I wanted this feature here. And then it can creep up there. And it goes the other
Mhm.
way sometimes. You're like, well, we don't need that excessive light fixture, whatever it is. My
Yeah.
point is, it's really hard to know. So, what I recommend in the book, in the Living Room Design Formula, is not everyone can purchase that really high end designer, quote unquote, furniture, but everyone can shop at those stores. Everyone can go in. So, what I recommend is I want you to start by taking a stroll in one of these higher end stores. And they'll vary. There really aren't many chains that carry this. So, it will vary by your area. If you're not sure what store carries that, I recommend there's a website called Perigold, PERIGOLD.com. That is part of Wayfair. It's kind of Wayfair's higher end brand. And I use it to compare a lot. They have great search tools, and I can access a lot of the things that I order as a designer. But what you could also do is see, okay, Bernhard is a brand that Perigold has, and they carry Bernhard at my local furniture store.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then just go in. And this is why it's so important to go in. First of all, I want you to know exactly what you're looking for in terms of design. So you might see something at that store that you didn't realize was important to you. It might be the way the cushions are on a sofa. You might realize, oh, I want a tight back sofa, which means it doesn't have a
Hmm.
back cushion. Um, by going in a store like that, you're going to get to see a variety of things. But also, that's going to give you a really good thermometer for price because you are going to see a sofa. Let's just go to the tight back sofa example. And we're going to assume that it's super expensive, and it probably is. But it's not always super expensive. There are times when I find furniture at the again, quote unquote, high end stores that actually are really competitive with some of those major brands that
Oh,
you
wow.
know and shop online. It depends on a number of factors. These brands that I order from, they have multiple manufacturing lines. And my experience is every time, even their quote cheaper unquote line is better than that kind of mass manufactured. It's all mass manufactured, but it's slightly less mass manufactured at these stores. But what I want you to do is I want you to just go in there. I want you to get a sense for what speaks to you and for what you are looking for. And then you might end up finding something that you're like, oh my gosh, that's only X amount of dollars. Or maybe it is more than you want to spend, but I'm going to save money in some other area because I love it
Yeah.
that much. Right?
Well,
So
yeah.
I want you to start there. And then if you are like, it's just totally out of the question, you can use those for your search terms. So you can
Hmm.
say, I want the tight back sofa. And then when you search online for a tight back sofa, you're going to be filtering, you're getting all the things that you already know you're looking for. And then
Makes
you can
perfect
try to
sense.
find the price.
That makes
So
perfect
I
sense.
hope
Yeah.
that answers the question.
It
Ethan Allen
does.
is a good place to go. They don't have all the different brands the way I do. Although,
Yeah.
well, actually they do, but that's a
They could
topic
have
for
changed
another
it.
day.
It's been a while since I worked there.
I regard Ethan Allen with great quality. And at any of these stores, what you're getting is such a variety. You're going
Yeah.
to see different cushion styles. You're going to see different back styles, fabric choices. You're getting all of that. So
Oh, yeah.
that's the way to go. And then back to what we said before, consider who is there. So if
Yeah.
you have a family that is, if you have kids having juice box on your sofa,
Hmm.
obviously your fabric choice is more important. It really
Yep.
matters.
It
So it
does.
will help guide you in that way.
Especially when that fabric is like $200 a yard and they're like, well, I have to have it. It's like,
I
well,
must have it. Let's put it on a pillow or a little ottoman.
yes. Keep your 5-year-old off of it like
Yeah.
forever. So, oh my gosh. Well, no,
Well,
that was
and
a
may I
really,
just
really
say
good answer.
no food and drink in outside of the kitchen. I mean, I thought that was obvious. I go into my clients' houses if their kid, I'm like, get the out of here. That belongs in the kitchen. I put a rug in there that's washable.
Oh, and
This
when
does
it
not
comes to
belong in the
tropical
living.
spaces, though, people want to live in those and say, hey, let's make a drink. And oh, we're going to get some snacks. And so it kind
Right.
of
Well, it's
brings
fine
in
for
the
the
food
adult.
drinks.
It's fine for
That's
the
true.
adult.
Yes. No kids. Get the kids out of there. Go
The
away.
kids cannot be eating on these nice sofas.
That's funny. Oh my gosh. I remember that. Like I said, they're all in their 20s now, but they still make a mess. But
Oh, yeah. They're probably worse in a way.
so, oh, but no, that was a really good tip. And I mean, I think for local people here in Houston, we're lucky because there's like a million furniture stores
Yeah.
here, from your kind of generic run of the mill mass marketed to like some really super high end stuff. And I was fortunate enough to be able to go out and visit all of this. But it's like you said, you go and you visit. If it is out of your price range, take inspiration from it. See what's the next best thing you can get that looks like it. And what I noticed too is that some people, they don't really pay attention to size and scale because what looks like what you see in a store is going to look smaller than when you get it into your home, unless you
Mm-hmm.
happen to live in a big, huge, giant castle or something.
Yes.
Because we had Lois Shanks here was a big brand. I don't know if they're still around, but they carried, you've probably heard of Henry Don. If you've
Mm-hmm.
ever heard of Henry Don,
Henridon. Yes. Love.
you need a castle to put that stuff in. It's
That's true.
giant.
Well, a lot of the Texas design, well, Houston and Dallas, they're getting so popular in design, even more
Yeah,
so in the
it's
recent
massive.
years.
I mean, I'm
And same in North
6'5", and this is,
Carolina. Ooh,
yeah, well, when you're super tall, things tend to be too small.
Yeah.
when you see that, it's like, it's bigger than me. I mean, if it's bigger than me, it's too big. That's what I say.
Although, to your point, it depends on the scale. So
Yeah.
I talk about that a lot in the living room design formula. There's a whole guide
Hmm.
for choosing furniture for your scale. And you can check that out on Amazon. I'll give another shameless plug. But the point I wanted to make is you can use the people who work at a furniture store as your assistants in a way.
Hmm.
What I don't want people to do is go in and get taken on a ride with the people who work in the furniture. No one's trying to take you for a ride, but my point is, people might go in and be like, "Well, I need a sofa," and then the salesperson starts showing them everything, and they go out of control. That's
Hmm.
not what we want. What we want is to go in with an idea. I want a sofa that's about 86 inches long. I want a sofa that is going to have a performance fabric. I want a sofa that is not as deep as whatever. When you go in with those guidelines, or if you go in
Yes.
with the measurements of your room, now the salesperson is working for you. They're using
Excellent
your
point.
information to create what's best for you rather than just kind of giving you this tour and seeing what sticks. So
Excellent. Yeah.
go in
Excellent
with
point.
your measurements, go in with your room size, and you'll get a lot of great advice from them.
It's like I said, have an idea of what it is you want. What is it that inspired you? Where do you see yourself going with your tropical escape? You're going to have images, mental images. I tell people, make notes, make a note in your phone, get a pen and a piece of paper, write things down. Then you've got something to go in with, because it's true. You go to a furniture store, it's like going into a car showroom. They try to sell you everything.
Yes. Even I get overwhelmed, and I do this every day. It's you
Yeah.
have to have blinders so
Yes.
that you're not like, "Oh, but I love that super modern sofa that only looks right in Miami." You need
Exactly.
to know what
Focus.
you're
I used to
going
tell
for.
people that focus, do not look at the next shiny new object. It's like,
Right.
pull them back over here. So, oh my gosh. And I wanted to ask you too. I saw on there was a video that I saw where you were on QVC,
Yeah.
and you had these really cool little, I made a note here, the little glass lanterns,
Oh,
those diamond
those
lanterns.
they are the
Are,
best.
are they, are they still available?
You know what? I am not
Mm,
sh I don't think they are, to be honest.
okay.
Um, that brand, is not selling with QVC at the moment, and I don't know that they will
Oh,
again.
okay.
Um, but I can wholeheartedly support solar lanterns for your outdoor and sometimes indoor decor, because my experience is solar lanterns can be picked up in a lot of places, and
Hmm.
QVC has a really good selection. So, you know,
Okay.
definitely check them out. But you don't have to go to QVC. What you want to look for is something that is glass. You want it to actually have that weight to it. If
Okay.
you compare all the options out there, some of the plastic ones, they're just not going to do it for you.
Yeah.
So, but if you are working on an outdoor space, especially, integrating a few solar lanterns is an amazing way to bring your space to life and is so cheap and requires no effort. I mean, you literally just put
I'm
them
glad you
there,
mentioned
turn them
that.
on.
Because what, yeah, we've written about lighting and the different kinds of lighting and cool light versus warm light. And so, and when you were talking with Brad about 3000K in lighting, I knew what you were talking about. I
Yeah.
didn't a month ago, but I know now.
It's important. It's important, and it's
So,
like, you don't know
yeah.
until you know. You don't know
Oh,
until you get that 5,000 that 5,000K light bulb and you're like, "Oh, I'm in a
oh,
hospital now."
exactly. Let's do some brain surgery. I mean, and when people put that into their house, I'm sorry, I am not a white light person in the house. I'm just not. And, I'm like, if you go to the tropics and you're on the beach, you're not seeing that anywhere. If you go into a
Right.
hotel, you're not seeing that
Well,
anywhere.
and really 15
Yeah.
years ago, you're not seeing it anywhere. It's,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe a fluorescent light somewhere, but, I don't think anyone is into the 5,000. I think that they accidentally end up with a 5,000 and they're kind of like, "Oh, this is what LED lights are." But they don't have to be like that. In
Exactly.
Incandescent lights are more like a 2,700, a 3,000K, and that's where you
Exactly.
want your LEDs to be. So
Yeah.
listeners, if you're listening, stick around 2,700 to 3,000. You'll thank us later.
You will, trust me. It's like, oh, that cold lighting, it's just, it doesn't work. But
Doesn't.
so I want to be very conscious of our time because I know you're like
Yeah.
super busy.
Oh, thank
Is
you.
there anything else you can tell us about you? And I know you mentioned the book. I'm going to have links in the show notes, but how would you like to close out with my listeners? Because I
Okay.
think
Oh
you're
my gosh.
brilliant and amazing, and you
Uh,
would be awesome to work with.
well, the feeling is mutual. I've really enjoyed this. I think that you are bringing so much pleasant things to think about. We all need more pleasant
You.
things in our lives. And what could
Mhm.
be more pleasant than adding our tropical escape to our home? I love it.
So,
Uh,
yeah,
it's great. It's great. So, I thank you so much for making the time for me and having me
you're
on the
very
show.
welcome.
And
Yeah.
anyone out there, please check out on YouTube. I am at Barrickman Design, which is a mouthful. I should have married someone with the last name Ford, but I love my husband. So it's Barrickman Design. That's at Barrickman Design. That's on all the social media. And please go on Amazon, check out the Living Room Design Formula. That is my book. It has everything you need to guide you step by step through the design process. And it's fun. It's an easy way. It's not pictures. You know, a lot of design books, actually, there's really nothing like this in the sense that most design books are pictures about that designer's work, and I love them. They're beautiful.
Mhm.
But this book is not designed that way. There are some pictures, but it's really designed to help you. It's to give you
Yeah,
the tools to do what a designer would do in your home. And you can use it with a designer because it walks you through the process, or you can use it on your own.
and that's what's brilliant. It's just creating your own tropical space. We give you all the inspiration, the ideas, the energy, the enthusiasm, and that's what you've definitely brought to the show today. So, Amy, I am eternally grateful. Thank you so much for joining on the show. So, we're going to say bye to Amy and tune in next week when we're going to have another guest on our show, but I'm not telling you who that is because it's a surprise.
I can't wait.
All right. Thank you so much, Amy. You take care.
Thank you.
So, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. This was a really great show. And our guest, Amy Barrickman from Barrickman Design, she was just awesome. And I know I learned a lot from her. Hopefully, you did too. Please check her book out on Amazon, The Living Room Design Formula. And you can also get her tips about how to create a gallery wall over on her website, barrickmandesign.com. And yeah, be sure to just really pay attention to what she said, because if you are considering hiring a pro, they are really going to depend on you to convey exactly what it is that you want. So, you want the process to just flow smoothly and just have that great communication between you and them. So be very clear about your inspiration and the areas where you need help. If there's something that you're having a hard time visualizing or just conceptualizing somehow, that's what the pros are there for. But yeah, she gave some really great tips about how to work with interior designers. So we really do thank you for joining today's show. Please consider becoming a member over on Patreon. It is what allows us to keep doing what we're doing here. We absolutely love it. So I've got a link to our Patreon page in the show notes as well. So until we meet again, have an awesome week. Just one that is filled with health and happiness and tropical inspiration. And yeah, we just love the tropics. And for those of you who love the tropics, you know what I mean. Just feel that vibe and strive for that relaxation. Everyone take care, and we will see you again next week. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.